welcome back to Vox Podcast, the weekly pseudo-academic roundtable pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with my co-host. Only one co-host showed up for this topic. I'm sad. Katya. Hey, Katya. How's it going?
Explosions! Cars go fast! Boom! Times! That's good. It's fine.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so no, you're excited for a good reason. You're excited for a good reason.
I'm excited for a good reason. There are, however, a surprising and upsetting lack of sea monsters in this week's episode. I'm offended. Why do you hate me, Mav?
I'm not convinced that there aren't going to be sea monsters in the next one.
There are sea monsters. I am. It will be the first movie I drag myself to a full theater for because I cannot be bothered. I don't like people.
Okay, so for the listener, today, and this is why neither Hannah nor Wayne bothered to show up because they think this is stupid and they are wrong. Today we are discussing the movie Fast and Furious, or Fast.
I need to correct you, Mav. It is stupid, but that is why it's glorious.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that. They could not be bothered to watch any. In fact, I think they both said neither of them had seen any of the Fast and Furious movies, much less the most recent one, which just came out last week, which I saw in theaters. It was my return to theaters. That's the first time. Well, actually, no, I did see one movie in theaters last year when we rented out of theaters and did the private thing. But this was a public theater that I was actually at, with people, and I was excited. Everybody was vaccinated, and I got to watch Fast and Furious on the big screen the way it was meant to be seen. Fast 9. Katya, have you seen it yet?
Unfortunately. I don't believe in going outside anymore, and I'm suspicious of crowds. Which, to be fair, was true before the pandemic.
All right. Well, so you haven't seen it, but I know somebody who has. So I have once again invited back our now good friend, because it's been literally a week since she was on last time, Monica Geraffo. Hey, Monica.
Hi.
So you've seen this movie.
I have seen all of these movies.
See, this is going to be exciting because we're going to talk about, are they good? Are they bad? We're going to talk about this movie in particular, but also just the culture around the world of Fast and Furious, the Fast and Furious world, if it were. I think there's a lot more to it. And I was writing about this. I was like, well, I love this movie. And people were like, but you hate bad movies. And it's like, I don't actually hate bad movies. I'm hard on some movies that a lot of people like. Like, I was very hard on the Zack Snyder DC movies because they're horrible, and I'm very hard on the Transformers movies. And they're like, but this movie's bad. And I'm like, no, this movie is
by a bad movie.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that a little bit because I don't think it's just a bad movie. I think that, for instance, the Zack Snyder movies were painful for me to watch. That's why I didn't like them, because I watched them and I felt like I wanted to hurt myself while watching. It's like, this is bad for me, literally bad. I don't want to be here. I don't feel that way about Fast and Furious. So that's why I want to talk about it. I think there's more to it than I think it's not simple. Is that fair?
More importantly, we have a new person on our show.
Oh, yeah. So, Monica, you were here like 5 weeks ago, and then you were here last week, and you're here this week.
Yep.
So you want to just stay forever?
Yep.
Okay.
Just roll that couch. We'll just pop you in there.
Yeah. So Monica is no longer a guest for the show. She is now our I guess our fifth co-host. Or I'm counting. Yeah, I'd say 5 because you're going to be the fifth regular. Probably Josh and Steph count as a regular combined.
They're like a host combined. Yeah, between the two of them.
They're honoraries, but they're both usually here only under duress. So, but you seem to want to be here, so welcome to the show.
Hey.
Thank you. I was so excited.
It's like audience, don't tell her she didn't actually win anything. Like you won, but you get to talk to us every week.
It's just like you won. It's a thing where the points don't matter and it's all made up. Much like culture itself.
Yes. So we saw Fast and Furious, or at least 2 of us did. Katya, first, what have you seen? Because you said you've seen some of them.
I was trying to figure this out earlier today. I have no idea because I think I've seen a little bit more than half of them, but I've seen the first, I think 3, and I know I've seen a few of the later ones after the post movie 5, which there's a break there that Mav and Monica were discussing that probably we'll get into. I've seen it. I'm not really sure which ones though, because they all kind of become the same movie, and that is not a criticism.
Oh, that's totally fair.
Because, okay, regular listeners of the show will know that every time we do a box office show, I will pick anything that is Godzilla or Godzilla adjacent because I like movies where cities get crushed. I'm 12. So I enjoy movies with explosions, fast cars, actiony things. And I occasionally like a movie where I can turn my brain off. And it's great, which is why I was asking a little bit ago. It's like, what do we mean by good? Because I would actually agree with you that many of the movies you listed, I also have I'm not really into like pretty much any Michael Bay movie.
I like some Michael Bay. I like some Michael Bay and I like some Zack Snyder. Not those.
Sure. But Fast and Furious, okay, the thing I love about Fast and Furious is I actually don't agree that it's bad. I think it is, like we've talked about the show before, I think it succeeds at what it's trying to be, which to me is just like the unironic joy in kind of dumb action movies. Which is exactly what I love about it, because that's I love those kinds of movies. It's lovely.
It's very self-aware.
Yes.
For everyone who's not Vin Diesel, they know what they've gotten themselves into.
That's the key part. Because I mostly agree with Katya. I have heard several reviews in the last week since I've seen this movie. Like, people were complaining that the movie, that Fast 9 gets bogged down because you keep getting into these absolutely ridiculous action sequences. Physics don't matter in Fast and Furious. Nothing matters in Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious has a rule for the last since about 7. In 6 it only applied to Vin Diesel, but since about movie 7, it doesn't matter how high you fall from. Long as you land on a car, you're fine, right? Like that is a rule. That is a rule of the world.
Fine, but I feel the need to bring this up as the person who works in costuming, but that white T-shirt is pristine. It's not just you're kind of okay. But
you're fine.
You are untouched.
Yeah, landing on a car means you're okay. So you can catch somebody with a car, and it really doesn't matter how fast they were going or where they fell from. That's a rule of their world, and that's ridiculous, right? And I get that's ridiculous, and I think for the most part, because there was a point where people were complaining about this movie is stupid, and critics, but since about movie 5, the critics have sort of been on board. They're like, okay, big dumb fun in a good way. Let's just turn on our brains and get with this. And then the stakes get more and more ridiculous every time. They've developed more and more superpowers. It's, the movie is bonkers. And then people have been like, well, but the problem with it is every time something ridiculous is about to happen, we're about to drive a car into space. Yes, that does happen in this movie. Oh yeah, spoilers for Fast 9. We're going crazy on this one. But they'll decide something like, we're going to drive a car into space because that's a thing we can do now. And that's part of it. Yeah. But then they are like, wait a minute, we need to slow down this movie, and we're going to have a good 15 minutes of solid human drama about the Toretto family starring Vin Diesel, where he has some pathos, and Vin's going to have an emotional moment. And people were complaining about that. They're like, get Vin Diesel out of these movies and I saw several reviews that are basically get Vin Diesel out of the way and let these movies be the craziness that they want to be, because he's slowing down the film. And see, I think these people are all wrong. Vin Diesel is not a bug. Vin Diesel is a feature, because you're right.
Because Vin Diesel, okay, I think you talked about that on the post, but Vin Diesel is a true believer in what he's doing. Yes. And that is, I think, part of
he's so precious and pure.
Referred to any other action movie series as charming. Fast and Furious, I think, is actually charming because Vin Diesel, Vin Diesel, I can't say I know him personally. Obviously, I don't even follow him that much, but I have seen him play D&D. And based off of the recordings of his playing D&D, which, by the way, is how he learned acting, he is just a delightful little nerd.
Yeah, he is.
And I feel like that really shines through at the Fast and Furious thing. So, this is the movie made by delightful little nerds for delightful little nerds. I don't care that he can, crush vehicles with his hands.
Yeah, he's a delightful little nerd who looks like he can bench press a truck. Yeah.
Which is great. it just brings me unmitigated joy for reasons I can't entirely understand.
I mean, even from a plot perspective, like I was actually pretty happy with all of the flashback sequences because they looked aesthetically like the first film. Like we got back to sort of like the very bare bones, just like street racing, which is what got everybody into this in the first place in a way that like it was plot driven fan service that actually worked significantly better than trying to explain the 7 angles to which Han didn't die. Like it actually served the plot much more.
Do you know what's great about the flashbacks? And so there are several extended flashback sequences, and in those extended flashback sequences, you meet young Dom Toretto, played by a dude who looked to be about 3 or 4 inches taller than Vin Diesel. But it's supposed to be 18. Yeah. And then you got 18-year-old Vin Diesel, Dom Toretto, and then you have his brother, who's supposed to be John Cena, played by a guy who's a good foot shorter than John Cena. But, he grew because, sure, he was 16 and now he's, 45. So, yeah, he got a foot taller. That happens. Yeah. And
did you also spend the whole time being like, that's the kid from Peaky Blinders? Because I just couldn't get rid of it the whole time.
No, for me, what it was is, okay, you've got those two, and those two are the focus of all these flashbacks. And there's 4 or 5 of them at least throughout the movie. But every time you have a flashback, they will meet other characters, some of whom have lines and some of whom are just in the crowd. And it is 100% completely clear to me who each and every one of these characters are. The girl who starts the race is Letty, and and you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, that girl's supposed to be Letty. The girl who's standing on the sideline is Mia. I got it. Like they captured the essence. There's so much attention to detail with just slight little casting, wardrobe, and hair choices.
It was great.
You know exactly who each person is, and I'm like 100% into this. And and they don't have superpowers because the world is acknowledging that they have developed like in the first movie, the first Fast and the Furious movie, the exciting moment of drama is, do you know when to press the NOS button on your car or not? That's like it. Like, don't push it too early because you'll lose the race. You'll burn out all your fuel. And that's like a moment of drama in Fast and Furious 1. Now they're driving to space by 9. But in the flashbacks, they're still concerned about when do you push the button. It's adorable. It's so great. And I love that about it. And I love that Vin Diesel really believes, because when they were saying we need to get him out of the movie because it's slowing it down, it's like, no, it's what makes it work. These movies work for me because they are crazy action fests that Vin Diesel thinks he's shooting Shakespeare. And he honestly believes that. And that's the only, he honestly believes that this is the finest, most important human drama ever put to the page. And that sincerity, that utter sincerity makes the films work for me. It is Shakespeare in the tradition of Shakespeare inventing pretty much every dick joke in existence. Yeah. But he's not trying to do that.
No, it's true. Yeah. Shakespeare as literature is it's very lewd. That's the point.
No, it's like Shakespeare is all about the combination of highbrow and lowbrow. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure how much Fast and Furious gets into highbrow,
but Vin believes he's totally highbrow.
And honestly,
and he's the only one.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually an interesting point because I think, having been the person who studies science fiction and trash literature throughout history, well, the last 2 centuries, the interesting thing is it would be interesting to know how people respond to Fast and Furious movies 100 years from now. Because a lot of the things we think of as highbrow now were not considered highbrow 100 years ago. So the fact you're talking about all of that attention to detail, these callbacks and recreating the early the sort of image of the earlier movies, at some point someone might be like, yes, that is highbrow. And that's not, and some people, purists who are boring, might say that's that's a sign of the degradation of art and of the medium. It's no, it's just things have changed, and also we've learned to appreciate things differently.
The continuity in these is so tight. Like it is even though they like so this series started with a bunch of guys doing a heist. But I mean the series started with a bunch of guys doing a heist to steal some DVD players, and now they're international spies flying to space. Like that, like and the progression is logical. And like so in the first Fast and Furious movie, you learn that Dom did some time in jail for flipping out and attacking a guy with a wrench. And it always seemed out of character for him because he's really just a big family man. So now 8 movies later, we actually got to see him attack the guy with the wrench, and you see, oh well, it was about family. Of course it was. Like they had to. Nobody cared about that one offhanded comment that he made 8 movies ago, but they had to tie it together. It had to be logically consistent. Like there's a point in this movie where Ludacris and Tyrese, because I realize their characters' names are Taj and Roman. It doesn't matter. They're Ludacris and Tyrese. They're like the actors and the characters are mostly indistinguishable. There's a point where they spend a good 2 solid minutes just discussing the last movie, like you would do.
So I also, when I say that I'm a huge fan, I am a huge fan as of quarantine. Like my quarantine hobby was to watch all of these films consecutively and live tweet them with my mother, because my mother is a giant fan. And, locked down in the house together, she was like, you're going to need to sit and appreciate these cinematic masterpieces. And, and so we did. We sat and we watched them. We sat and watched them in order. And when you talk about the highbrow, lowbrow, like the thing that attracted me to them initially was like the amount of Von Dutch t-shirts happening in this movie from the early 2000s. Like it was the amount of lowbrow that was just so completely like owned. It wasn't trying to be a movie in space. It was trying to be a time capsule to the 2000s. Like, and so watching all of them in order so closely, there never is a moment where you get confused, except for like the secret baby in Fast 8. I feel like for me, Fast 9 like really course corrects the entire franchise, which is why I loved it so much.
Fast 8, the fact that she has a baby, like the timeline is kind of, how long was she pregnant for? Like 16 months?
Probably the first half hour of that movie trying to be like, when, pregnant, baby.
I mean, and there's some goofiness that happens. So I don't know if Katya knows this. The third Fast and Furious movie, Tokyo Drift, what was supposed to be Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, for the most part, has none of the original cast in it. Vin Diesel shows up in the last 30 seconds. Like, is it even 30 seconds? It's no, like, it's the like absolute
right
final
the
minute of the film.
Roll.
Yeah. He's there 30 seconds max at the end, maybe only 15. For the most part, it's an entirely new cast. And it fails at the box office. It does horribly. Like no one so then they bring back everybody for part 4. But they want to kind of keep some of the mythology that was happening in part 3. So they do a complicated lore trick and they make Fast and Furious. They retroactively decide that it was 4 years into the future. So Fast and Furious 3 happens, and then they have 4, 5, and 6 to get to the point of Fast and Furious 3 and then insert it into the chronology. So they build toward, so they basically do like it was. And it's like, but it's like, you know how like Star Wars starts with 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, and 3 are supposed to build into it, and they do poorly because you figure out, wait, how does Darth Vader not know he has kids? Where's the Luke? We're like so much. There's like so many like holes.
Yes. Well, I think
this is really tight. Yeah, they actually did a job.
What you were talking about is like the Vin Diesel sort of like fanboyish nature about his own project. Kind of is what makes it, is because like that shows that they care
so much.
And I think that's what I think that's what, like I say, like it's the only like movie franchise of this kind I could use the term endearing, and it feels right, is because there is something endearing about how much care goes into this movie that like every other like goofy action movie of this nature, I feel like people just put together because they know it will make, because it's a fun movie and they know it will make money, and like, not to say that they don't care, but the level of detail is not going into it. Mm-hmm. And it actually, okay, this is very different, but it actually kind of reminds me of like the old school Godzilla movies, of like, they were hokey and weird, but like the lore and like the goofiness was part of the point. And it was very like, That's what made them cult classics. I mean, that's the other thing is it's like maybe comparing Fast and Furious to other action movies isn't quite right. It should be compared to other, regardless of genre, weird cult classic movies, right? Like Big Trouble in Little China is like, objectively, is it a great movie? No, but it's fun.
I talked about the space thing, and this is like you mentioned having, paying attention to the fans. There's no good reason for them to go to space in this in Part 9. The reason they went to space is because for the last 4 or 5 years, all the fans have been like online have been like, sooner or later they're just going to have to drive to space because they're going to run out of stuff to do. They're going to have to drive to space. So they constructed the movie around giving them a reason to drive to space, and they could have just driven to space, but no. Again, because of this nerd attention to detail, there's not a good reason for them to do it, but they try to make it plausible that they did. Like, they're like the Tokyo Drift guys. Remember I said the guys who were in that third movie that were an entirely new cast. Apparently for the last 3 movies, the Tokyo Drift guys have been like doing rocket science experimentally to see if they could make a rocket car, which conveniently they needed a rocket car later so they could drive to space. And like you find that out earlier in the movie. It's a callback. It's seriously, there's no good reason to do it other than the fans really, really wanted it. And like you all but have Lil Bow Wow who's in this movie say, look, we're doing this for you guys.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's so delightful.
I don't see why I don't see why Wayne and Hannah are not behind them.
Because they don't like joy. They don't like joy. Yeah. That's the problem.
I think it's because the trailers and the films are just two entirely different impressions. Like, you don't understand that the amount that's being like fan service can be a really great thing because it shows that people care. But if you're not a fan service means nothing to you.
Katya, I have to tell you something. This movie, so Tyrese is a character in this movie. Tyrese is an actor in this movie. Roman is a character in this movie. But again, I tend to forget their character names. So Tyrese is in this movie, and he spends this entire movie wondering if he is if he's an action superhero, like out loud.
Oh my God. Okay, I have to watch it now.
There's a point where he is being chased by bad guys very, very early on in the movie. He's being chased. He's almost captured. And he knows that the bad guys, he falls into a pit. He knows the bad guys are coming to get him. And he's like, well, I'm not going to go out like a punk. I'm going to die here. So he takes his machine gun. And as the bad guys come after him, he just starts, Ramboing it. He's spinning around, just firing at everything that moves because he's outnumbered like 15-1. And he wins. And then for a moment, he's like, holy shit, I'm still alive. I'm the luckiest man ever. And then he just starts thinking about it. And he pats himself down and he realizes he's not been hit. How is this possible? And he looks and his clothes have bullet holes in them. And then he spends the rest of the movie going, this doesn't make any sense. How are we all still alive? We should be dead. None of this makes sense. I think we're invincible. And they're like, this is stupid. And he's just shy of realizing he's in a movie.
Yeah. That's so great.
Yes. Because he knows he's in a ridiculous movie, and Ludacris knows he's in a ridiculous movie. Charlize Theron absolutely knows she's in a ridiculous movie and does not give a fuck.
It's very much something that happens in a lot of cult classic films, where like there's the self-aware. I mean, even like I forget the exact lines, but there's some moments in Princess Bride where it's like breaking the fourth wall. Turning the camera and not to say that that's exclusive to like the cult classes. I mean, also oddly feels like a very Shakespearean move. Someone's gonna give us a 1-star review for they compare Shakespeare to the Fast and Furious.
Give us a 5-star review because there's more coming. I'm gonna make a pitch in a moment for this is the most important racial movie of our time.
Interesting. I'm here for it. I forgot what I was gonna say because that statement just went my brain. Okay, Mav, why is this the most important racial film of our time?
No, I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay, we're not ready.
I'll throw something in there. Okay. So when you arrive at LAX, there is a giant poster for Universal Studios. And on that giant poster, because there is a sort of section of the backlot studio tour that is a Fast and Furious ride, there is a picture of Vin Diesel. And he is holding on to the arms of a plane with his own arms. So the plane is also the wingspan of Vin Diesel's wingspan. And having never seen these films, arriving in LA for the very first time, I was like, this is ridiculous. But after having seen these movies, I'm like, yes, Vin Diesel can straddle a plane with his wingspan because it just fits. Like something about the excessiveness and not questioning the excessiveness in the same way that like he is only marginally not aware of his like existence within this film. Like it all is still okay. Like that is within Vin Diesel's power, and that is within your suspension of disbelief as a viewer to view it within Vin Diesel's power.
I'm watching this movie. I went with my wife. Definitely went with me. And I was surprised because she doesn't normally care for like she's seen maybe one or two of these before, and she was like, and I was like, I'm gonna go see this, especially because I want to do an episode of the show on it. And she's like, I'll go. And I was like, really, you will? And she's like, we haven't left the house in 2 years, so yes.
The bar for an outing is low.
She was like, it was literally like, she's like, you want to go out to a place? Like, you know, we'll pay money and sit in air conditioning, maybe buy a drink or something. This sounds exciting. And again, Steph's not here today, but I think she will agree. This was absolutely the best movie she'd seen in a theater in a year. So, yep. Without a doubt. Because it was lack of options. It was a low bar, but she'll say that she thought this is stupid. She spent a lot of time on the movie going, this is so stupid. And I was like, yes, it is. But every time I looked over at her, she was just laughing joyously. And it was just because it is ridiculous, right? There are parts where Vin Diesel at one point in this movie collapses a cave on top of himself on purpose. He just pulls on some chains and he destroys
his bare arms.
Yeah, he just uses Herculean strength to after barehandedly killing 30 secret agent ninjas. Then there's more ninjas coming, so he just collapses the walls upon himself and he takes upon himself, I'm going to sacrifice myself so that my team can live. And he collapses this cave upon himself into and falls 100 feet, doesn't land on a car, so you think he's going to die. He lands like in the water that's beneath the cave, apparently, and he's having that end of life flashback, and then his wife jumps in and saves him, and then 5 minutes later he's just okay. He's like, oh, thank you for saving me from this wall collapse.
That nap was great.
Yeah. and so there's ridiculous, and stuff's like, why this makes no sense. And I was like, it makes sense because like Vin wanted us to see how much Dominic loves his family. Dom was willing to sacrifice himself for family. He's got to do that every movie. So that's the scene in this movie where he's willing to sacrifice himself for family. And it was an emotional beat because the movie needed an emotional beat because that's the story that Vin wants to tell. And you have to appreciate that, so that you can appreciate the fact that he's about to make a car repel, like he's going to go rappelling with a car, and that doesn't, like, you need both of these to work. And then after all of that, then you get to have Dame Helen Mirren show up in this film, 70, 80, however old she is, and then just decide that she's going to be the world's greatest stunt driver, and you buy it.
Yeah, and also. Because we choose joy.
And the very convenient narrative selection as to like how magnets work or when they work or what they stick to, because the entire plot of this film is we've stolen a big magnet and we're going to use that big magnet to attach it to our cars. And sometimes that pulls an entire car horizontally through a building that happens to have, I don't know, like not a single structural beam in the center of the building that might stop that car. Like you just don't
through a building.
It.
She means like a skyscraper a block away. You can magnet a car.
That's the property that magnets have.
Yes.
And the streetlights are not affected by the magnets until you need them to be. Until you need all of the electrical wires to be magnetized conveniently for the plot of your film to stop the bad cars. Like
it's just mind control. It seems very plausible to me.
You're just on board the whole time.
Oh, yes, I get that it sounds stupid, and like our listeners might be thinking, why do they love this movie? And my answer is, if you don't understand these movies and you don't love those movies, but like if you're listening to our show, then in all likelihood you think the coolest thing that ever happened is a movie about a space alien who destroyed half the universe with his magic fucking glove. Okay, because we talked about that movie. We had a whole episode about that, or actually, we had 2 whole episodes about purple guy destroys the universe with magic glove, and you bought it. So like, buy into the Fast and Furious. Okay, it works.
Interesting question though is why are certain ridiculous movies credible and other, well, I say credible in air quotes. That's an interesting question of like, why do we find, the Marvel universe acceptable versus people turn up their noses, which you shouldn't. I think the Fast and Furious were like, is it because it's like, I wonder if it's just because Marvel and comic books, I mean, because originally comic books were considered like goofy children's stories by a lot of people.
And I think that's part of it. I think people are willing to give extra. You're willing to say Thanos has the magic powers for some reason because like, oh, he's magic Thanos powers. He's got a magic glove, and people want to believe like they want to look at the Fast and Furious movies and say these are Carthies. This world is reality. So why can they do this stupid stuff? And I'm like, it's not reality. The world was the world was kind of reality in Fast and Furious 1.
Reality is the way that Grand Theft Auto is reality, which is to say it pulls from the real world and then adds a bunch of fun stuff because we like joy, people.
In Fast and Furious 2, like the exciting thing, we're already leaving reality behind. In Fast and Furious 2, Brian, Paul Walker's character, drives for 3 blocks at 90 miles an hour while looking to his left at the girl he likes to impress her and ignoring the road without hitting anything, without, it's a trick that he's practiced. How? I don't know. It doesn't matter because it just was supposed to be cool. It is one of the coolest scenes. I actually love that scene.
Stories are fun sometimes without realism.
Yeah, it is a magical world. It was always a magical world. And I think that people don't want to, because it looks like the real world in some ways, people don't want to let it be something else, but it's not. I mean, like other shows that we like on this podcast, we've talked extensively about The Good Place. The Good Place is not reality. It's just a show that we like. Riverdale is the best show on television. It's ridiculous. Like nothing matters. And the Fast and Furious world is ridiculous, and you have to buy in. And once you buy in to the lack of physics, plus the fact that there is a serious drama going on inside of an absolute farcical world, because Monica, you said at the very beginning, Vin Diesel is the only one who doesn't know that this is a comedy, right? Like everybody else is aware. Helen Mirren is in this movie clearly because she's like, oh my God, I'm going to go and have a ball. And she's sharing scenes with Vin Diesel, and Helen Mirren knows that she's in a comedy. And I don't know if Vin knows it or knows or not, but at least when he's with Helen Mirren, he seems so happy, and it's just, they're delightful together. I've never seen two people with 30 years age difference. Yeah, they've got such chemistry together.
Well, also it's like, think about it this way. It's like Vin Diesel basically got every kid's dream job.
Yeah.
Like, of course Helen Mirren wanted to be in this movie. Who wouldn't want to be in this movie? Yeah, it is ridiculous. It's like every kid who played Nerf fights as wanted to grow up to do this. Mm-hmm. I do kind of wonder with the prestige thing. I wonder if it also has to do though with other. I'd be curious to know of like the audience that is 100% there for Fast and Furious, what other kinds of media they consume, because I wonder if there's a consistency between like, cool, we buy the Marvel universe, and I was actually thinking of like a lot of the ridiculous physics and stuff remind me a lot of anime. Mm-hmm. And like I said, also video games. Like I would be willing to bet, because there's a lot of video games, like video games that are based in realistic worlds. Grand Theft Auto is probably the closest like corollary, and I imagine there is actually a lot of cross-pollination there. I don't know for a fact, but I would believe it. But there's like, I don't play Grand Theft Auto, but I do. My brother does, and it's just sort of like, oh, I'm driving a blimp now. Oh, I'm driving a boat now. Like literally, I was watching him.
Tyrese could totally drive a blimp. Yeah, Tyrese could totally drive a blimp. He can drive anything.
There's like there are like sure like the whole like street racing whatever. And interesting that my brother and a lot of his friends they're not street racers because that's illegal, but they do race. But they're all racers and they build their own cars. And oddly, I like there isn't. It's not realism in the sense that obviously the physics of Fast and Furious are bonkers, but when I have hung out at car shows, especially in sort of drift cars, Japanese imports, all this other stuff, it's like similar in many ways to some of the cars that are in Fast and Furious, although nowhere near the sort of like expense usually. There's a kind of I see some consistency in that sort of like joy of sort of like we built a thing and look how fast it can go, and oh my god, we took out the trunk so there's a cooler in it so you can pop a beer out of it. And like, not to say that racing culture is actually like the same unmitigated joy as Fast and Furious, but I kind of see it. Like I think if you are a car enthusiast, there is probably a little bit of Fast and Furious in you, and I'm sure somewhere my brother's ears are burning and he's probably about to kill me because I actually don't know that he likes these movies.
I imagine there's probably a lot, and again, I own a car. I like cars. But I'm not a car guy. And I imagine there are with anything like this, there are going to be people who are super into cars and they're going to hate this movie because of the lack of realism.
Absolutely.
So
the cars is bonkers, and a lot of the cars themselves, especially the early ones. I remember the car people in my life basically being like, "That's a shit car. That's actually a shit car," and like, but even then, having the opportunity to nerd out about like your car knowledge, which I clearly have very little of, only by proxy.
Well, I'm going to make fun of Steph on this episode because Steph's been on the show before, and I've told this story before. My wife hates the movie Inside Out, the delightful Pixar movie Inside Out. She hates because as a psychologist, she finds it invalid, and its scientific inaccuracy bothers her because it's a delightful children's movie, and she wanted it to be accurate when we went and saw it, and she was mad. So I imagine there are car people who feel that way, but for the rest of us, the rest of us are like Inside Out. It was beautiful, and I think that for me, Fast and Furious fits that. It's like, yes, I get that cars don't work that way. I get that physics don't work that way. No matter, even if you have Ludacris say, no, this will work because I've done the math in physics. Like, that's a line in this movie. He justifies everything by just saying the word physics.
I did like physics once.
Yeah. Well, he's supposed to be a scientist in this movie, so he goes, "No, I did the physics. It's fine."
It's fine. Physics. It's fine. I would imagine a lot of it. I think it's like it's more. The more you know about a subject, the more difficult it is to participate in sort of willful suspension of belief, right. And you have to engage in that to enjoy Inside Out, to enjoy Fast and Furious, to enjoy really any kind of like
magical realism.
Yeah, any kind of magical realism or any kind of spectacular kinds of fiction. Mm-hmm. Because I think
it's professional wrestling. In real life, most actual street fights, like if you've ever actually been in a fight, I've taken martial arts, right? And when you're taking martial arts, when you're planning to fight somebody, fights generally last 10 to 30 seconds, or they last forever because people are running from each other trying to not like it. But like the kinds of things where you see an action movie or a professional wrestling match where it's like 5 solid minutes of guys flipping all over the place and punching each other and dodging, that's not how fighting really works. It's not how it works in anything you see in a martial arts movie or in a professional wrestling ring. That's the spectacle of entertainment. That's trying to do impossible stunts so that you can enjoy the idea of a fight. But real fights don't work that way. And I think that's how we do spectacle with everything. And it doesn't matter what the thing is, like we're each of us is experts in something, right? If I'm watching a movie and they say they have a guy who's supposed to be a comic book guy on, and he talks about Batman's first appearance in Detective Comics #1. Anybody who's a fan of comics right now just cringed to even hear me say that, because Batman doesn't first appear in Detective Comics #1. It's number 27. Everybody knows that. And those things bother you because you know too much.
So knowledge steals joy is what you're telling me.
Maybe.
It's even, this is a very big tangent, but I think I do wonder if this is related to kind of like the highbrow, lowbrow thing with Fast and Furious, is because like academics talk a lot of times, specifically people who work in literature or pop culture, talk about a lot about how academia can ruin reading for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you basically have to train your brain to shut off in order to enjoy media without being like hypercritical and like analytical, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there is a certain amount of like entertainment and sometimes even joy in the analysis, but you don't read I think a lot of us struggle to read the same way we used to before we became academics, which I think is also true of just, being an adult after a certain point. But because adults don't believe in joy, which is why we all want to be Peter Pan. But I wonder how much of that is also like, so Fast and Furious, okay, like there's the car thing and the subject matter expertise, but how much of it is also like we've become much more savvy consumers of television and movies? Because like when I think about like the average serialized television show now versus, the early 2000s, like the late 90s, it's a very different world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Fast and Furious is in its own little world, right?
Absolutely.
If you want to compare it to anything, I think probably our listeners might be upset, but the things that you can compare Fast and Furious to are basically limited to Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, and I guess maybe James Bond. Like, like nothing else. Nothing else has that kind of.
Definitely put it in the category of James Bond, especially when we're talking like fast cars, gadgets, explosions.
Yeah, no, I just meant number of. I meant like entries in this continuous world.
Yeah,
like it's like you don't really have franchise. Like a franchise for most movies is like like you think about the Harry Potter world is special, but those were planned that way from the beginning. Most franchises are like, hey, there are 3 movies in the there are like 3 or 4 RoboCop movies, right? Like that's it. It's not a lot. Ghostbusters. There's Ghostbusters 1 and 2 and a reboot, and now we're about to make another reboot. Like you don't really have an ongoing saga of character development, because the characters do develop in very much in a Dungeons and Dragons we're leveling up kind of way.
Yeah, I definitely see like once I found, because I didn't know when I saw the original, like the first couple of Fast and Furious ones, that first couple of movies, that Vin Diesel was a giant D&D nerd, and after having learned that, I was like, I see it. Because even the things about like the physics don't always work well, that right? Guess what? If you roll a 20, you crit, you succeed on whatever you wanted to do. Like this, all of Fast and Furious is just critical roll after critical roll after critical roll. It's great. Which is also why, like, I think if you are a D&D player or you play any kind of game where that's a familiar experience to you, like, oh my God, when you crit and you basically get to tell the game manager, like, this is what's about to happen. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. It happens. And there's a certain joy to that.
Right. And Dominic Toretto only rolls 20s. That's like his whole gimmick.
Yeah. No, it's great. Because if you get to control the fictional universe and you're a D&D nerd, of course you only roll 20s.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I find the films delightful. I don't like, people think I'm liking them ironically. I'm not. Like, it's just the pure utter joy. Yeah, the joy of being there, because yes, Vin believes that he's making the greatest high art. He's telling this wonderful, spectacular, epic poem of the rise and fall of Dominic Toretto. He believes that's what he's doing, and he takes it extremely seriously, and it is great. And what makes it great is let him do that, and everyone else around him is just having the time of their life. The perfect person that for Fast and Furious is Ludacris. Ludacris is in these movies after Monica. What's his first one? Is this first one number 2?
Number 2, yeah.
Yes, Ludacris in Fast and Furious number 1. There is a bit part for Ja Rule, the rapper Ja Rule, and when they made number 2, Vin Diesel's not in number 2, but Paul Walker is, and the producers wanted Ja Rule back, and Ja Rule thought he was worth. I think they offered him $500,000, and Ja Rule thought he was worth more, so he tried to play hardball, and he's like, I'm just going to not answer their phone calls until they offer me more money, and they got tired of waiting, so they just called Ludacris and essentially rewrote the part by changing the name and the character from one thing to another thing, and they're like, okay, Ludacris is in these movies now, and I've seen Luda do interviews where he's like, and I want to thank Ja Rule for being a fucking idiot.
Yeah, because I get the wanting to be paid what you're worth, but on the other hand, it's like I can't imagine this is the kind of movie franchise you get in to get paid. I mean, I'm sure they're paid well, but now
Luda is ridiculously wealthy now, because when they when they made Fast and Furious 2, Fast and Furious 2 was a movie that no one was asking for. Like Fast and Furious 1 was kind of a success. Like, and I was like, okay, I guess we could do another one of these. And then they don't really start getting crazy until a little bit in 4, but really 5 is the turnaround. 5 is where it really, there are 2 worlds of Fast and Furious. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then there's 5 through now, of which where it just suddenly inexplicably becomes this D&D spy epic. Because before it's like a street racing movie. Tokyo Drift's about street racing, street racing and crime. Like Fast and Furious 1 is let's replace all the surfing and Point Break with car racing, and we're just going to make the same movie. And they're fine. I mean, I like those early movies too, but it really, I don't think Ja Rule knew what he was turning down, and Luda's just happy.
I think anyone really did, other than maybe Vin Diesel.
But what's great is Luda, Helen Mirren, all these people are in this film, and they know it's ridiculous, and they don't care. And the sheer delight when you see Luda going, yeah, I did physics. We're gonna go to space. It's gonna be fine. Like you can see Luda, Chris, the person, saying Taj's lines and just going, I know this is stupid, but this is gonna be awesome. Just wait, we're gonna drive to space. Like you can tell what's going on.
The thing is, like they should get paid what they're they're worth, but also like if you're gonna be in these movies, you're there because it's ridiculous and an unmitigated joy.
Right.
Just like watch. I imagine being in these movies is just like a massive trip. I'm very envious.
Okay,
but
before we run out of time, I want to make a little bit of a pitch. It's going to be I want to change gears. I want to, because I've got theories about how, like I said, it's not ironic. I think it's ridiculous, and I enjoy the ridiculousness. But Katya, you even said, a lot of the classic literature that we look at. Hannah's not here, but Hannah would point at Dickens, right? Dickens was not high art when he was alive. He was like the popular writer that like.
And he was Melville. Like we see it. Also, I believe Great Gatsby is one of them. Like we see, there's constant shifts because what tends to be highbrow. Like basically older forms of art tend to be considered highbrow as we move forward. Like, for example, the idea of highbrow television when television was first emerging would have been ridiculous. Now we have highbrow television. Right. We
look at I Love Lucy as high art now. It's slapstick at the time. So yes.
Well, because it's not that it's not high art because we suddenly decide it's not slapstick. It's we recognize that slapstick is a valuable form of comedy.
Yes.
And it was done, and I Love Lucy did it very well. And I think that's the case to be made for like, okay, like is Fast and Furious a good movie franchise in the way that we normally judge movie franchises? Maybe not, but it's not playing the same game in the same way Star Wars is not playing the same game.
Right. I would argue that we've been judging movies wrong. I think for Fast and Furious, I think it's invented its own rules, and I think it will be high art because I do think it's doing several things remarkably well, which make it an innovative series that deserves academic, cultural, high art criticism and consideration.
I mean, you made the comparison sort of just based on longevity to James Bond earlier, but I think if we look at the transition of like James Bond, especially like the old films, as really sort of making that transition towards high art. Like and that's another one where I think it's just because it went on long enough, like that there is sort of like you're seeing that cultural memory that's now like it's imbuing it with like nostalgia, but it's also like I don't know, some of it is just like those movies themselves are shifted. Like we're not quite at the point where like Pierce Brosnan James Bond is going to be regarded as high art. Like that's still somewhere in the Fast and Furious
too recent,
too many gadgets, like but something about the original Sean Connery James Bonds, and so I think you're right, like, but I think that the answer is we just have to keep making more, like the more Fast and Furious movies we make, the closer we're going to get to regarding them as high art.
Yeah, because there's I think 24 Bond films. I might be a little bit off there, but there's a lot.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I think though Fast and Furious has I think might go down better, have a better review in history, and I think this connects to what Matt's probably about to talk to is his race theory. And how that like in this in the franchise, because many of the early Bond films from like an ethics perspective, representation of women, of people of color, i.e. that doesn't happen, did not age well. And even some of the cinematic features did not age well. And I'm not enough of a film buff to speak to that on Fast and Furious, but I think it's more than the Bond film is going to sidestep some of the cultural problems.
It's trying to, and that's what I want to talk about right now. Because for me, the most innovative thing of this of Fast and Furious is at the center of Fast and Furious, you have Dominic Toretto as your main character, played by Vin Diesel, a man who is of ambiguous cultural heritage. For the listeners who don't know, who are not Vin fans, Vin knows his mother is around. He knows his mother is white. He knows his stepfather is a black man. His mother later married a black man, and he's never met his father, and his mother has not seen him since, like, I guess she was pregnant. Like, it was a relationship that didn't work out. So he was raised until she remarried, he was raised by a single mother. And from what she tells Vin, his father was probably a black guy, right? Like, she doesn't know much about him. I don't know how much he really knows, but he's just like, yeah, I don't really know what my past is. I assume I'm a man of color, which is an odd, but when you hear him tell it, I don't blame him. It's an odd way to feel, but it puts him in a weird cultural space. Like, he really does not know other than to look at himself in the mirror and recognize his features and say, I don't think I'm entirely white. And I think that's a complicated way for Vin Diesel, the person, to grow up. But he did grow up that way. And because his stepfather, who, basically raised him, is black, he's got a lot of black heritage. And he's put himself into a film where he cast Jordana Brewster, a woman who is half white and half Brazilian, as his sister. So he is probably half white, half black. Jordana Brewster is half white, half Brazilian. So they are an ethnically ambiguous family to start with. And then in this most recent movie, let's just cast the entirely white John Cena as a third sibling, and let's not address it at all. Charlize Theron's character makes an offhanded comment, which is like, yeah, I see the family resemblance. What the fuck are you talking about?
She also says, you look a little bit different than everyone else.
Yeah, because she's like, you look a little different because you've got a stronger chin. It makes no. I mean, and she's making
a spiritual family connection. It's fine.
But she's like literally making the joke that, like, yeah, you've got a stronger chin than your brother, but I see the family resemblance. Clearly, they look nothing alike, but like, it is, he wants to tell this story where he can have this found family where, where race doesn't matter to be in the family, but race is acknowledged as important. So they're not post-racial. It's not like, I don't see color. No, they don't do that. They absolutely see color. And they accept each other for who his character marries a Latina woman, and he's got a best friend who's white. He's got, two other best friends who are black, and they are the most multicultural family, and they're family because they've decided they are, and they love each other. And it's constantly like, this is a weird version of masculinity. It's a masculinity that prides itself on talking about how much you love your family and your friends. It is so progressive.
Oh, yeah, it's not something we see a lot.
Weirdly stupid movie.
And especially like outside of film and television, I think that there's an expression of a growing desire for that. I think especially among guys who basically like, great, toxic masculinity, not fun. Want a different thing. And I think this is like, Fast and Furious is a great, even as straight white lady, I remember watching these and they were so much fun because it's like, here's a way to do like stereotypically masculine media ridiculousness without it being gross.
Yeah, he's a meathead. He is, and Vin knows that. He's like, Vin is, I'm not gonna say he's the finest actor in the world, but Vin's played other characters. Like the character he plays in Triple X, which you look at on the surface looks like the exact same movie. Xander Cage is a very different person than Dominic Toretto, and then Riddick is a very different person. No, he can play other characters. He has made the conscious choice to make Dominic Toretto be a classic, alpha male meathead, except that he is endearing and loving and cares about family and is not afraid to tell men that he loves them constantly. Says it constantly in the films. I love you guys. You're my, I don't have friends. I have family. That's a line that he uses.
It's nice.
It is so precious, and I love, like, everything about it is so progressive. I love the fact that he decided, for whatever reason, he's like, I want John Cena in this movie. I'm going to cast him as my brother. brother, look, just deal with it. It's fine. Like, don't like, and it's the kind of thing that, it's like when you're making a high school play, right? Like you're making a high school play and sometimes you cast people like you just cast whoever and, okay, sure. A brother and a sister or white and black, whatever. It's a high school play. That's about the logic that he uses when he's casting Fast and Furious because he wants to tell the story he wants to tell. Helen Mirren's children in the Fast and Furious. She's got 3 kids, 2 sons and a daughter. And the actors who portray them range from like mid 50s to like 20 something. And she's a woman like genetically, there's no way she could have given birth to all of the kids that like are her kids in these movies. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care because it's not about that. It's just about the delight.
Having Helen Mirren and hanging out with Helen Mirren.
yeah, and it's fine.
It's casting. It's about who the person being cast is, and then fitting them into the role, which is like it may not be the way to make every movie, but it's nice. Especially, especially what you were saying, Mav. It's a movie that acknowledges race, but it isn't like so it isn't post-racial in the shitty way. No, but it's also not making a huge deal of like, nope, this is just how it is.
They're gonna sit around and have a barbecue, and they're gonna like it so much buys into their last name's Toretto, which I guess are like when you watch it and you're like, are they supposed to be Italian or Mexican? I'm not quite clear, or black, and they're clearly supposed to be a very ethnic family. Like there's a lot of this is all about family. We're gonna like have mom's recipe for barbecue chicken, and we're gonna sit around and drink Corona. This happens a lot, and it's never acknowledged, other than the fact that acknowledging that all the cultures are important. And then you have like the big car. They didn't have a race wars in this issue. Well, they did, but only in the past, right? They go to these massive street racing events, which they call race wars, which is clearly not an accident. But it's not like race wars is a happy event where everybody just comes and like races cars. It's a race war, you see.
But you're also right that especially in the earlier films, race wars are very literal in that you have a white guy and a black guy and an Asian girl, and each one comes with their own like equivalent of like a high school clique, like.
Oh yeah. But the Asian girl's got to drive an Asian car, and the black guy's got like a souped up classic car, and the white guy's got a souped up, modern Mustang or something. Yeah. So I love the magical progressivism that I think that to talk to your thing about whether or not we are, how high art's going to work. I think when someone digs up the Fast and Furious movies 100, 200 years from now, and they're looking at them, is it realistic? No, but it is such a weird reflection of the aspirational world that Vin Diesel wants the world to be, the early 21st century to be, from 2000 through 2020, and I love it for what it is. I think he is addressing so many and again, maybe not in the he's never going to win the Oscar. He's going to try. He submits all these films for Oscar consideration because he so believes, because again, he believes in these movies.
Hey now,
but
I mentioned this sort of off recording, but this is the headlining on the beach blockbuster premiere film at Cannes this year.
That's so great.
Before it premieres in Europe. And if that's not cinema, I don't know what the fuck is.
Yeah, it is. It's so great. I love that. I love that it's headlining Cannes, because why wouldn't it? I mean, well, I know there aren't that many options. But like I said in the call for comments,
they didn't. They picked Fast 9.
And I said in the call for comments, I love that they were, like Chris Nolan, who fought tooth and nail to get Tenet in theaters last year, and nobody went to see it. I still haven't watched Tenet. I want to. I own a copy. I've got the Blu-ray sitting on my coffee table, and I bought it because I'm like, I like Chris Nolan films, and I'm like, I will watch this eventually. And I've had a year, and I've just not actually bothered to pull it out the shrink wrap yet. I'll get to it, But Vin Diesel was willing to wait. He said, no. This movie, and I remember this movie needs to be seen in theaters. I can't release Fast 9 direct to streaming. This is a very important film.
The experience.
So he waited. He believed in this project, and that's so much a part of it. Everything about this works because of the sincerity. It is the most sincere movie ever. Like when people complain about the parts that make no sense with Dom being drama. Like everything Dom does, he delivers this with such like not just enthusiasm, sincerity. You know, Vin Diesel believes in this script. Like when in Fast 6, I think it is, where he gets into a street fight with Jason Statham's character, Deckard Shaw, and he says an actual line of dialogue, possibly my favorite line of dialogue from the entire Fast Saga, is the problem with a street fight, street always wins. And then he stomps his foot and causes an earthquake. That destroys a parking garage because of course he does.
I don't want to ruin the joy of the Godzilla-esque earthquake stomping, but I want to go back to something you were talking about with the racial stuff to bring it back to the serious moment. Mm-hmm. Is I think actually the fact that he's able to have this more progressive vision of race in these movies and the like speculative bonkers weirdness of them go together, because so there's different ways to write like science fiction and speculative fiction, but the idea of using a fantastic genre to reimagine something like race relations is like part of, you know, a lot of those traditions of magic realism, as well as Afrofuturist writing, all kinds of stuff. So weirdly, there's an argument to be made that the fact that this is a bonkers world makes it easier to basically do something like, hey, we have a family that is maybe related by blood, we're not sure, that is of infinite racial makeup that may or may not make sense, and we're just like, yeah, cool, because this is a world that's already weird, so we just accept like, yeah, that's fine. And part of the value of like doing that through speculative literature is that by normalizing it in literature, you're helping normalize it in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would also say it extends beyond race to gender as well. And I think what's really remarkable about Fast and Furious is the character of Letty, because again, Steph's not seen all of these, so she did not realize, and she hadn't seen any in a while. She asked me, she's like, what is Michelle Rodriguez's character supposed to be? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, is she another sister or what? And I'm like, no, they're supposed to be married. And she's like, really? They didn't seem like they had any chemistry together whatsoever. And I see why she feels this way, because they are supposed to be married. They never kiss in the film or anything like that. And a lot of their scenes are separate because they've got their own separate adventures going on during this movie. She could tell they cared about each other. She could tell they were raising a child together, but she assumed they were supposed to be siblings. And one of the things that makes this happen is in a movie where, full of beautiful people, right? Like there are lots of very attractive women and men in this. And Vin could have cast his wife as any number of bikini clad supermodels. They're all over the film. But no, he cast Michelle Rodriguez, who very intentionally plays this character as the butchest lesbian that you've ever seen. But she is, I get why, like, she is supposed to be in love with Dom. Letty and Dom are in love, and they're both super masculine. And I love that works. I mean, I get why you don't recognize it. Like, I think Steph doesn't recognize it because you'd expect for one of them to be ultra femme. Like, if you see Dominic Toretto, clearly he's going to be with, a girly girl with massive boobs who's blonde and, he's had those options in these films, but he decided, he clearly made the decision to write himself in love with Letty, this super butch woman who is strong and confident and not girly at all. And he's allowed Michelle Rodriguez. So I keep saying allowed. For people who don't know, Vin also produces these films. He's not just the star. He is the major producer.
Yeah.
Yes. And so this is his vision. And his vision is, no, a strong man like Dom would be in love with a strong woman like Letty. That's the way he sees it.
And she does
interesting to me.
Save him, like within this narrative, when he pulls down the entire cave on himself and falls into this never-ending body of water chasm, in which we assume he will die. It's Letty who supposedly has the strength to pull Vin Diesel's gigantic body out of the water. And like, there's still like a lot happening there.
After clearly diving because he falls a good 100 feet into the pit, and then she was a good 50
stronger than Vin
feet
Diesel
above
is.
that. So she dove 150 feet through a cavern that was falling apart to swim. I don't know. It makes she is clearly a superstar.
I dig it.
Yeah, and also like even at the beginning of the film, the film starts with them trying to, it's very much they're out of the life, and they're just going to raise this baby, this toddler, and then people need them for one last mission. They come to get him, and Vin's like, no, we're parents now, and Letty's like, nah, bye.
It's not my kid
I'm gonna
anyway.
go be a superhero. Yeah, I'm gonna go be a superhero. Sorry, hopefully if I live, I'll see him when I'm done. And then Vin decides to go as well. But like I love how tough she is. We talked about the falling on cars superpower, where like as long as you land on a car, you're fine. That first started happening in 5 or 6, and now, and it was very much a Dom superpower. Letty just has that superpower. Letty crashes a bike, flies through the air 50 feet, lands on the hood of Vin Diesel's car, and it's 100% fine. It's like, thanks for putting your car in the way so that to break my fall. It is essentially what she does, and he's like, come on, get in the car, and then she does. Like it makes so she's got action hero superpowers that are easily on par with this, and I love that about these films.
I mean, despite the fact that everyone is sort of in a heterosexual relationship, like the ideas of chosen family, like also make this a very queer film. And the idea that we would have these representations of femininity and masculinity that aren't necessarily what we would expect given what we think we know about Vin Diesel, like also make these potentially like have very queer readings as well.
I gotta believe bisexuality is coming. There's supposed to be 2 more movies, and like he's gonna have to explicitly make some. Well, there's 2 more in the main saga. It's supposed to end at 11, but they can always change their mind. We just had 9. It's supposed to end in 11. We already have 1 spinoff saga. We know that there are at least 2 other spinoff sagas planned. So who knows how many there are really going to be? But like, I gotta imagine at least in the main saga,
have superpowers.
What?
Toddler has to have superpowers.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I assume they're going to go on forever. I hope they do. But like, it is odd, the heterosexualness of it. It does seem to be an obvious thing. Like, you don't even have a lot of like lesbianism for show, which you'd think which he's not against, because again, Triple X does this, right? There's a lot of in Triple X. There's a lot of we're gonna make it really clear that we just had a threesome, so for the gays, we want people to see this, right?
In the
doesn't
third
happen
film,
here.
there is, because I specifically remember being like, oh, that's them like trying to step it up because now the girls are making out for show.
Oh,
and
I don't even remember that.
Never happens again after that.
I don't even remember that happened.
Because there's always those very like exploitative, like when you go into the race battle, like the camera is absolutely at butt line.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of girls
introducing you to the cars at butt line. And but you sort of like, you get less and less of that over time, to the point where I feel like in Fast 9, like there is a scene where he arrives at the John Cena mansion with Helen Mirren, and there's just this white party full of women happening. And it's almost played as if it is like an undesirable place to be because it's the villain mansion, or like it's a joke in like, you don't actually want to be around all of these women anymore. That feels like an active rejection of.
He's a family guy now. He's Gary.
Right, he's a family man. That's not the behavior of a family man.
Yeah. He's and it's weird. It is a weird rejection that, like, I gotta imagine. I mean, there were flirty moments between Jordana Brewster and Michelle Rodriguez that were, but like, you could also play them as siblingness. She's, they're supposed to be sister-in-laws now. She's like, it's not about Dom. You will always be my sister. But like, there's a touching love there in the exact same way as the loving relationship, the very clear loving relationship that Paul Walker's character and Vin Diesel had a lot of "I love you, man" moments throughout. and then you see the same thing. I mean, if it's me, I just eventually decide that Ramsey, Taj, and Roman, Ludacris and Tyrese's characters are in a relationship. Like, I imagine they're going to become a throuple sooner or later, because I don't know.
Well, because that's the problem with like all of the heterosexual pairings is you don't have enough ladies, so like you just gotta group the rest of them together.
Well, it really feels like me when watching it that Taj and Ramsey are supposed to be a couple, but the film wants to keep reminding me that Roman likes her too, and that she hasn't chosen, even though there's no reason why she would choose Roman. Like, it doesn't make sense for her. She's got way more in common. Like, Taj and Ramsey's favorite hobby is making fun of Roman. Like, that's what they do. That's what they bond over, is like making Tyrese look like an idiot. So, but like, it wants me to believe that there's love there. So I think there's just as much love with Luda as there is, don't you think?
I buy it based on, because they purposely put it in a place where they are never touching, they are never kissing, they are never revealing feelings, yet despite clearly writing things for the three of them that like just ooze with like weird sexual tension. But they've also made the conscious decision that there will not be, I mean, I guess there's not a lot of making out in general by anyone.
No, not anymore. In the early films, but in the later films, it's all about family. They're family films.
Can't kiss family. It's weird.
We've resolved nothing, right? Like, we've
resolved it. Other than people who don't like Fast and Furious, just don't like Joy. I
do think I don't know. I want our listeners to give the films a chance, and it is weird. This is we should make this clear. We said that there is an old film and a new film. There is a very definite split, and we should probably explain this so if people can get into it. So the first film is really a crime heist movie. Mm-hmm. The second film is a sequel to a crime heist movie. The more times I watch all of them, and I wonder if you agree, Monica, I start realizing the second film is pointless it's a cash grab, right? Like, there's no reason for the second film other than,
Ludicrous.
Luda's in it. It's the first one with Luda. It's the first one with Tyrese.
Yeah.
The first movie ends with Brian, Paul Walker's character, leaving the gang and going back to the cops. And then the second movie starts with, that didn't work out, he's a criminal again. It's literally undoing the ending of it. And then beyond that, the third movie is an entirely new cast who are mostly bit players except for Han. And then the fourth movie is when you get the gang back together. Letty dies. Fifth movie, spoiler. Letty's not in. Huh?
I said spoiler.
Yeah, whatever. Spoilers for everything. But really, the fifth movie is where you call in The Rock for the first time, and then they start to get good. They become spy movies in the fifth movie, like very much so. They're all heist movies until the fifth movie, when now they're spy movies, and just deal with it. And so that's where this break is. So I think they're all worth watching, but if you don't want to devote all that time to it, 5 is where you start, I think.
But I will say that you have to watch 5 and 6 and then go back and watch 3.
Yeah, because it makes sense. 3 is a very different movie if you watch it where it chronologically happens, other than where it was actually filmed. It doesn't totally match up. There are there's a lot of hand waving you have to make, but it really is. It's about the magical realism of it, and it really gets ranked up. I think they're worth watching. I think it's a franchise worth investing in, and I think it's doing a lot of serious work that I don't think it gets credit for. And I don't know how else to do that other than to put it on the genius hands of Vin Diesel, because he's the tying thread that makes this all work. And you can't take him out. Like, you need, as overacting as it is, you need that heart.
You absolutely can't, because I don't know if you guys saw Hobbs and Shaw, but Hobbs and Shaw is the result of the Vin Diesel The Rock feud, in which they refused to work together, and so now The Rock has his own sort of spin-off of the franchise, and it's borderline unwatchable. The Rock's family
goofiness
owns a car shop, and then no one ever races or gets inside any of those cars, and it's, you really just realize, like, the reason this isn't working is the absence of Vin Diesel.
Yeah, you need his sincerity, you need the earnestness, you need the utter belief that we are telling a perfect story that Vin Diesel brings to this. Like, he is what makes it work. as ridiculous as it might seem, like that story, that human drama of Dom Toretto, a stoic man in this ridiculous physicalist world is what makes the film work.
Also, I totally encourage you, if you do not believe that Vin Diesel is necessary to these, go look up him playing D&D in Critical Role, and I think it will give you an entirely different perspective on why these movies. Because I'm actually kind of serious here, because I think the first time I saw that, I was like, this is where, because I don't like every Vin Diesel movie, but the ones where he's producer, I actually enjoy the more than I expect to. And I think it's just because he is, like I said, he's a delightful little nerd. And like watching him play, especially because he does not look like there is nothing about Vin Diesel that if you don't know if you know nothing about him, there's nothing about the way he looks or sounds that would make you believe that kid learned how to act by being a giant D&D nerd as a child. But that's absolutely his background. Yeah. And he is a very good D&D player. But you also see him, if you watch him on Critical Role, like you will see where I think a lot of this comes from. Like he basically gets very into his character and he's like, I'm going to smash the bad things. And he starts doing this very visceral chuckle, which I think most RPG players will get when it's sort of like, I get to do 10d6 of damage now. And it is. I've had this experience, and I can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast in public. But no, it's like there's a physical response to that where it sounds really dumb, but like you're just like, yes, it's the nerd joy. It pulls little giggles out of you. And I think, and Vin Diesel understands that. He understands how much I think media, even stupid media, and perhaps especially stupid media, can bring joy. Mm-hmm. And that it's also not just because it is joyous and weird and bonkers doesn't mean it's not substantive, because that is also true of most RPG games.
I would also recommend, if you've never seen it, there's footage online where you can find of him in the sound booth, the recording booth, recording Groot's lines for Guardians of the Galaxy, where he 100 the amount of dedication that Vin Diesel has to saying just one line, so you'd think that they would just kind of record it once or twice and then just use the right one. No. Vin sits there and records every possible emotion for Groot as an adult, and for baby Groot. Like he goes through and he does them and he tries, what am I supposed to be feeling here? What does he mean when he says I am Groot? Okay, let me get this. I have to get in character, and he centers himself and he focuses to give you the right I am Groot. I love it.
See, this is the kind of labor that nerds want to see.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. But then, when they go and overdub it into other languages, he goes and does they don't hire like a guy to do Italian and a guy to do Japanese and a guy to do Mandarin. Vin Diesel goes in and does I am Groot in the other languages. He does the entire process again.
Oh, he's a delightful little nerd.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate you. I salute you, sir.
He does. I mean, even if you don't like Fast and Furious or any of the Vin Diesel movies, he cares about what he does, and he does it well, whether you like it or you don't. Yeah. I also hope that we never reach a future in which Vin Diesel turns out to be a horrible trash human, because I think I would have a nice breakdown.
Yeah. But for now, he seems to be a great guy who, again, I get why people don't want to give it a shot. Give it a shot. And if you go and watch it, just stop trying to make it make sense in a conventional way. Like when people are like, well, he's doing this different thing. It's like, yes, that's the movie. He is doing a different movie than everybody else. Embrace it and love it. The same way we love Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage does a thing. Vin Diesel's doing a thing, and let him do his thing and then enjoy it and enjoy the mastery. And I mean, I was serious about like the progressiveness of it. I think the lessons behind Fast and Furious are so massively amazing. So anyway, I want to thank no longer a guest, Monica. Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
I hope you remain as excited as you are today. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Monica Marvelous.
It's spelled different in the two different places.
It's true. It's annoying. Somebody else took the Marvelous with an S on Twitter, so it's Marvelous with an X on Twitter. X like X-Men.
I'll respect that, and I'm moderately terrified.
I'm not going to advocate for us terrorizing this stranger on the internet. But if we wanted to ask nicely on my behalf, that'd be really nice of you.
Oh, that poor woman. Katya, where can people find you?
Technically, you can find me on Instagram at @justthatnerdkid when I ever post again, which might be never.
Every once in a while, I see something every once in a while still.
I put some stuff in my stories. I'm just not feeling it. I have feelings about Mark Zuckerberg, and they're not positive, and leave it at that.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, all the places, always at Chris Maverick. You can follow the show, all those same places at Vox Popcast, and you can follow the show's blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where you can find out about what we're talking about next week. And the week after that, we've got some interesting ideas for shows coming up. And so we would love to have your feedback. Subscribe to us there or on Twitter or Instagram, Facebook. Leave us comments. Let us know your thoughts on upcoming shows so that we can include them when we record. If you like the show, we certainly hope you do. Please subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever the hell else you get podcasts from. And do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review, especially on iTunes. That helps other people find the show by tweaking the algorithm, making us more popular, making us famous. I don't know why you want us to be famous, but you do. Trust me, you do. It means that there will be more shows because we can devote more time to it. And also, it's about family. And that's important somehow. Watch Fast and Furious and you'll learn that. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you like and subscribe to us on YouTube, that also helps us out. You get to see this show with visuals, and you get to see my other podcast, Gosh Golly Wow, 2 podcasts for the price of 1, which is also free. So please do that. I would like to thank Maximilian of Thoughtform Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd like to thank you at home for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.